Raina Troy hotline.
Alicia, Michael, what's going on?
We know you have takes. We have takes.
I'm actually surprised that your Rant Line, Rave Line, whatever, isn't completely full.
Why can't we just win a game?
Can I blame Michael Castillo for this?
Can I blame Bob Connolly for this?
Could I put on a zebra shirt and just go out there?
Scratch, claw, up against the wall.
Can't explain what I'm feeling right now, guys.
I can't believe it.
Let's open up that Rave Line! Woohoo!
Oh, I can't believe USC is 7-5 again. Oh no!
Hello everybody, welcome back to Retro Radio, episode 583, coming to you on Monday, December 23rd. It's Festivus! The Festivus for the rest of us. We're going to preview, I think everyone's favorite game during the festive period, the Las Vegas Bowl, USC and Texas A&M locking horns Friday nights on ESPN in Paradise, Las Vegas. We're going to preview the game, give our predictions, over, under, and so much more. As always, you can follow us on social media at Rant of Troy. Email address, ranoftroy@fanside.com, and our phone number, 818-643-7227, Second Whisper and Show. I'm your host, Michael Castillo, journalist, my co-host, here in the Rant Troy studio in Los Angeles. Across the room from me, Alicia D'Artolo.
Hello, everybody.
Alicia, I got a lot of gripes with you people.
Are we about to air some grievances?
We're going to air some grievances.
Okay.
My grievance, my Christmas grievance. Look at me. I'm already screwing up. Festivus grievance.
My Festivus grievance is that you just called it Christmas.
I know. That's horrible. By the way, Cam in the chat says, Michael, make sure you get the pole out of the crawl space. Buddy, the pole's right here. Where is it? We got the pole. The pole is right here. It's the official Seinfeld Festivus pole. Merry Festivus to all who celebrate. But here's my biggest holiday grievance, by the way. I just learned what Elf on a Shelf is. 35 years old. Never heard of this stupid thing. I think I might have heard the phrase once or twice, but like I had no idea what it was. And then I talked to you and you're like, yeah, my family's never done it. Like it's, who knows what it is? Is it an East Coast thing?
This is now what I'm wondering. Because I have heard of Elf on the Shelf and I've like looked it up because I don't understand. I'm not sure how it like works. Mm-hmm. But none of my friends that I'm aware of ever did Elf on the Shelf.
Yeah. It's weird.
Apparently it's sort of like a newer thing.
Weird.
So I don't know. Chime in the chat if anybody did Elf on the Shelf when they were children, but like it might be like a generational thing too, because I just looked up the Wikipedia and the book was published in 2005.
Is this what these Gen Zs are doing?
I mean, maybe this is why Gen Z is the way they are, because they've been
ruining our society. Unbelievable. That's where my grievance is. It's of course with Gen Z, but Alicia, we got a ton of stuff to get to, so I think we just need to get to the news ASAP. All right, the Trojans have two new commitments in terms of the transfer portal. Number one, I think we start with a guy named Keyshawn. Anytime USC gets a Keyshawn, you love it. How about Keyshawn Silver? Hi-ho! Keyshawn Silver is on the way. Redshirt senior, 6'4", 336 lubs. 26 tackles, a tackle for loss, a sack, and a quarterback hurry in 2024 for the Wildcats over in Kentucky. PFF grade of 61.8 and 313 snaps. Interior lineman, your nickel tackle, your nose tackle, wrong end. Your nose tackle. This is huge for SC, literally and figuratively. Because the Trojans have been trying to replace Stevie Tuicolovatu for going on 9 years now? Gonna be 9 years.
I'm now trying to think of who was the last nose tackle that USC had that it felt like USC didn't need to replace or extremely upgrade on.
Like a returning nose tackle?
I'm thinking back to Antoine Woods.
It's probably Antoine Woods. Yeah.
It's been a long, long while. It's kind of like the linebacker thing where it's like, when was the last time USC had like a really good linebacker?
Yeah.
Yes, Keyshawn Silver, 336 pounds. To put that in perspective, Bear Alexander and Kobe Pepe were the heaviest defensive linemen for USC last season, and they were 315 apiece. So, there's beef. And big time beef. Had played a lot for Kentucky, 313 snaps last year. He had a PFF grade of 61.8, which is decent. Not anything special, but you hope that he comes into USC and is a veteran force in the middle. Just his size alone is a huge upgrade. No offense to Gavin Meyer or Nate Clifton, but those guys were simply undersized for the job that USC wanted them to do. And Keyshawn Silver is not undersized.
No, not at all. But SC got an even bigger dude, 6'5", 350-pound guy, 3 tackles in 2024 for Jamal Jarrett out of Georgia. Any relation to Grady, by the way?
I don't think so.
Interior lineman named Jarrett. I'm going to think Grady. Either way, PFF grade of 53.0 in 2024. Only 69 snaps. Nice amount for him with the Dogs. Last time SC got a defensive lineman from Georgia, the guy was good football player. We'll see if he lasts a little bit longer. Redshirt sophomore.
Yeah, it's a similar get as Bear Alexander. The ceiling is not as immensely high as Bear Alexander, but hopefully the trade-off there is that he's he fits in and sticks around. But redshirt sophomore, and this is the thing is Keyshawn Silver is a plug and play experience in the SEC. He's your veteran guy inside. Jamal Jarrett is. You can look at as more of a project. Redshirt sophomore, only 1 season of experience with regular playing time, and even that playing time was not extensive. He comes in and he's going to be looked to be shaped by Eric Henderson, and I think that in terms of just taking a swing and seeing what you get, that's exactly the. I mean, I'm not mad that USC took the swing on Bear Alexander. It didn't work out, but you got to keep taking those swings because if Jamal Jarrett works out, whoo, buddy, again. The beef. Yeah.
And hey, you said he might not be Bear Alexander. If he's Cub Alexander, I think you'll take that. Alicia, before you move on, the biggest, I think, issue here, potentially, I don't know. Alicia, what's the fabric that he likes to wear while he plays a football game? Jamal Jarrett.
I don't.
Did we not talk about this before? Am I screwing this up?
No.
Isn't he the one who wears number 55?
Oh, that's what you mean by fabric. Yes, Jamal Jarrett has been number 55 in his football career going back to high school, and I don't know beyond that, but certainly back to high school, he has worn 55. He wore 55 at Georgia. He's coming to USC. Will they let him wear the 55 at USC? My guess is no, because the 55 club is...
We know the answer is going to be no, and it's dumb. It's dumb.
They'll say no, number one, because he's not a linebacker, and number two, because they're so protective of that number to a degree that will destroy that number, that, whatever. Personally, I simply want to see the number 55 back on the field for USC. I would give it to him. I just want somebody to be... You need to, break the seal and just get it out there. And if a transfer from Georgia who's 350 pounds, who's worn 55 his whole career, wants to break that seal for USC, then by all means, please do.
Yeah.
That's
Let him
just
do
me.
it. Yeah. I'm with you. I like that the 55 is a prestigious number at SC. We've talked this a million times over. But it can't be so prestigious that nobody ever gets it. Wasn't the history of the number. It's been retconned. Give the number out, please. All right. Other targets to know: SC in the mix for Keanu Tanavasa from Utah Utes, 6'4", 301 pounds. SC's really trying to beef up on that line.
Yeah, and this one, apparently, so KSL Sports reported that the favorites at this stage are Michigan and USC. Mm-hmm. Competing with Michigan for a big defensive lineman like that is certainly not going to be easy, whether it's from the NIL or the development standpoint.
Right.
But I will say, if you go on Twitter right now and you search Keanu Tanavasa, Utah fans are distraught that he is in the transfer portal. They are sick to their stomachs. They love this guy. He was supposed to come in and be a team leader. He's going to be a redshirt junior in 2025. We've talked about this with coaches, that sometimes you just want to go on Twitter and see a fan base. When you're picking up a coach, you want to see a fan base be really bummed that they're losing that coach. Yeah. When it comes to transfers, if I go on Twitter or Blue Sky or wherever and I search a player's name and I see fans just like on the verge of tears because they are so disappointed that such an important and well-liked and coachable and just top-notch player is leaving them.
It's a good endorsement.
That's huge for me. I was already excited just by looking at the numbers, and then I saw what Twitter was saying, and I was like, man, whatever it takes, USC, get this guy, because that's the kind of, not just size you need, that's the kind of player that you need to set a tone. The aura, exactly. Yeah. Aura.
Yeah. As Gen Z would say. Yeah. I think it's incredible that you found Utah people on Twitter. Never heard of that. But yeah, that's where we stand with the Trojans looking for additions. Quick rundown of the departures and where they found new homes. Rajon Davis, Corvallis, going to the Oregon State Beavers. Kalogo Ta'aga to Utah. So maybe there's a trade for Tanavasa. We'll see. Deuce Robinson going to the Noles, Florida State. Cade Eldridge to UW, Washington. Mason Murphy to Auburn. Quentin Joyner to Texas Tech. And Bear Alexander to the Oregon Ducks. Your thoughts on all that?
No big surprises. Deuce Robinson to Florida State's a nice pickup for them. I'm going to be very curious to see how his career develops. I think Cade Eldridge is going to do really, really well in Washington. He feels like a good fit there. Mm-hmm. Bear Alexander to Oregon is the most predictable transfer that I have ever thought of in my life. And all I can say is good luck. Let's see how, it's the embodiment of that of the meme from why do I have Curb Your Enthusiasm? It's not Curb Your Enthusiasm, it's the other show. But the has it worked for other people? It's like, no, they delude themselves into thinking that it'll work, but maybe it'll work for us.
Here's the thing. SC losing Bear Alexander wasn't one of those things that was going to keep you up at night strictly because there was always stuff going on in and out of the portal, drama, and then he wasn't winning battles on the practice field as much as you'd like to see. He wasn't getting the reps and all that kind of stuff. So it looked like, even though we know that the player that he can be, it was easier to cope with from the USC perspective, right? At the same time, him going to Oregon, I think there's one of two outcomes. A, he's an All-American and he is the guy that everyone has seen that he could be, everyone from IMG to Georgia to SC, etc. Or you never hear from him again, right? Like, it's one of the two. And strictly from the Oregon perspective, a 1-year rental of Bear Alexander, probably the best situation of any of the schools to get him, because it's just 1 year. Like, you have no expectations of anything more. It's a little bit more palatable for Oregon knowing that, like, this is a temporary thing, whereas SC got into bed with Bear Alexander expecting it to be a full-on years-long commitment, and it wasn't. Same thing with Georgia, and same thing with every other high school that he went to, right? So Oregon knows that this is a short-term deal. We'll see if they can get anything out of him.
Last one, Quentin Joyner to Texas Tech.
Yeah.
Little surprised that's the best he could do. But
I I agree. We'll see. Texas Tech not exactly known for great running backs, but hopefully that changes with him because he's a hell of a player. Talk about JUCO stuff. The NCAA has granted waivers to JUCO athletes. Going forward, the JUCO eligibility will not count towards your NCAA eligibility. This is big for Diego Pavia, the quarterback over at Vanderbilt. But SC defensive back DeCarlos Nicholson could benefit from this. He was on Twitter asking for legal advice about this.
Yeah, I mean, when Diego Pavia got the ruling in his favor, which essentially was to argue that eligibility should not, NCAA eligibility shouldn't come into a factor when you're playing JUCO ball that is not NCAA associated, is basically the argument that he made, and he won. The NCAA is appealing that, so this waiver is theoretically temporary until that whole thing is adjudicated. But for now, at least for this season 2025, JUCO athletes or players who went to junior college, who used eligibility in junior college, who would otherwise still be eligible for this season, will be allowed to come back for 2025-2026. DeCarlos Nicholson is on the same schedule as Diego Pavia was. He was 2020 and 2021, he was in junior college. 2022 and 23, he was at Mississippi State, and then he came for 2024 to USC. He has been talking on Twitter the whole time about how he wants to come back to USC, how he wants another chance. And as soon as this ruling came down, Ross Dellinger was tweeting about it, and DeCarlos Nicholson quote tweeted it, "So I got one more chance," with the eyeball emoji. So from what I can glean, DeCarlos Nicholson will have an extra year of eligibility. The question now, from a USC perspective, is will that year of eligibility come at USC, or will he need to jump back into the portal to find a new home? Personally, I don't think that USC's cornerback depth is so good that you would turn away a sixth year senior who really wants to be there and has already played for you and has played hard, played good at times, not so good at other times, but I think if I'm USC, I absolutely welcome him back, but I'm also not the one that's in charge of roster management or NIL. So that's a question that needs to be answered, but certainly will be answered because I do believe he will get that extra year.
Yeah, 100%. All right, let's turn the page and get ready to talk about the Vegas Bowl. SC and Texas A&M locking horns Friday night. 7:30 p.m. on ESPN. The Aggies 8-4 this season under new head coach Mike Elko. His first season coming over from Duke, a couple years in Durham after being a longtime defensive coordinator at a bunch of stops. The Aggies, one of 6 teams who were 5-3 in the SEC, sort of like the log jam with South Carolina, Tennessee, Alabama, like all those teams that were 5-3. Where do they rank among those? I don't know. Take your pick. I mean, there's so many of those teams that would kind of fit in that mold. Sort of the first year that we've seen like parity in the SEC, for the lack of a better way to put it. Unranked are the Aggies, but they're 26th technically because they're the top team and others receiving votes in both the AP and the coaches poll. FEI has them at 19th. One spot behind USC, 6-6 USC, which I think is another sign that, like, I don't think that the, when this thing got put out there, it was, there was, when the matchup got announced, we saw, like, comments and tweets and all those kind of things and skeets about how it's an 8-4 team against a 6-6 team, and people talking about it as if these two teams don't belong on the same field. Texas A&M is 8-4, yes, but they have wins over McNeese, Bowling Green, and New Mexico State. 3 teams that I think SC would have beat. SC played one team that wasn't a Power 5 team or a Power 4 team, right? Which is Utah State. So That's it. Like the SC and Texas A&M, pretty damn even. And I think FEI kind of proves that to be the point. The Trojans 18th in FEI, the Aggies 19th in Sagarin. A&M is 19th. I think the Trojans are like 27th, so a little bit further apart. But either way, in the same basic tier of college football this year. Before we get into the offense and the defense, what are your just basic thoughts about the matchup?
Yeah, I'm with you. I think that Texas A&M was playing good football early in the season. They remind me a little bit, and I'm not trying to make a 1-for-1 comparison to be sure here.
Sure.
But the way that their season progressed is reminiscent a little bit of USC last year, where they were winning games. They were starting to sort of break down and starting to have things be closer and closer, and then the sort of wheels fell off in November. And they had, like you said, New Mexico State they get in November. If not for that New Mexico State game, considering the fact that they lost to Auburn, if that's an SEC game in there, you have to wonder what that game would have looked like, just based on the sort of psychology that the psychological place that Texas A&M ended up in at the end of the season, which is where my comparison to USC last year comes in. It's not less about the teams directly; it's more about the psychology of a team that came in to the last stretch of the season, and you just saw them, still trying to play hard, but they just couldn't quite get there. There was something broken to allow them to get over the hump.
Right.
So they're an interesting team because, again, we look at USC last year and say USC had been psychologically broken and their season fell apart at the end of the season, and then they come out in the bowl and they look rejuvenated, they look new, they look excited. So I'm curious with both of these teams. The matchup for me always comes down to, in this era of the bowl system, which team wants it more.
Sure.
And I don't know that we can tell that on December 23rd. I don't know that we'll be able to know that on December 27th at 4 p.m. which team will want it more. We will find out when they get on the field. And we've seen USC teams in bowl games that have wanted it more and have not wanted it more. So,
great.
Yeah.
My gut is that A&M sort of would want it more, strictly because they are coming off of a rough end of the season, but it's year one under Mike Elko. I think they want to. It's not sort of the same situation that SC is in. And look at SC last year. Flirted with playoff candidacy, right? And then the year went to hell. But they were still sort of motivated to win the Holiday Bowl, even though we didn't think that they would fare, positively in the Holiday Bowl. And Texas A&M, similar fate. They were looking at the playoff at one point, and now they're not. But let's talk about. And
they would have easily been in the playoff, I think, if they hadn't. Well,
the Auburn loss is the one that screws
that's
them
the thing
up.
is, I think if they don't lose to Auburn, they are a 3-loss SEC team that goes to the playoff, because that their losses to Texas, South Carolina, and Notre Dame are vastly different than what the playoff was figuring out when it came to Alabama.
It would have been close.
It would have been very close, but they certainly would have had an argument if not for that 2-point loss at Auburn.
Yeah, but alas, it happened. And if for SC's case, like 5 plays away from being 11-1, right? So,
yeah,
see, 5 plays away from being in the playoff. All right, let's talk about Texas A&M's offense, led by Marcel Reed at quarterback, redshirt freshman. He saw action last year, but it was very minimal in the allotted time that you could play as a redshirt and keep your redshirt. 361 yards in the Texas Bowl last year against Oklahoma State, replaced Connor Wigman, who got hurt literally on the first play of the game. And so essentially a start, a bowl game start, not exactly, but practically, right? Started at Florida in week 3 in lieu of a Connor Wigman injury again. And then took the job from him in November. Started the last 4 games, 7 starts all told for Marcel Reed. 61% completion percentage, 1,500 yards, 12 touchdowns, 4 picks, passer rating of 143.7. We talk a lot about par for quarterbacks being 140, right around par. 107 carries, 497 rushing yards, and 6 touchdowns, which I think leads to the question, is he the most dangerous runner that SC has faced or will have faced this season? All year. Riley Leonard, SC just faced him the last game of the regular season, Notre Dame's quarterback. Surely Riley Leonard, I think, is a better dual threat. But at this point in Marcel Reed's career, early on, I think he's looking to run probably more often than not when in trouble, which might make him a more dangerous runner, all told. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's the correct assumption when it comes to sort of his mindset. Yeah. And you often see that with young quarterbacks who have rushing ability, that they are more likely to just take off and run when they don't have something in front of them. Yeah. But I will point out that Riley Leonard and Marcel Reed, given that Reed didn't play the full season, he missed some games. They averaged the same number of like rushing attempts per game, and their rushing yards per game was Riley had more, but they're sort of in the same window. So yeah, definitely another one of those guys who is not afraid to take off and run, who Texas A&M is comfortable having him out there as a runner. In a way that, like, it seems that USC isn't that comfortable with any of their quarterbacks this year. It's a factor, and USC's defense has gotten their back broken by a guy who can scramble. So this is definitely a worry.
Yeah. In the run game for the Aggies, look for the 3-headed monster in the backfield. It's actually 4. You look at their depth chart. It's wild. They have 4 dudes with oars. But we're going to list out 3 here because there are 3 predominantly with a lot of production. Amari Daniels leads the team in carries, 139 carries, 661 yards, 8 touchdowns. Le'Veon Moss, all SEC second teamer, second on the team in carries, but more productive, 765 yards, 10 touchdowns, averaging 6.3 yards a pop. Very dynamic runner. I think he's someone to sort of keep an eye on and circle. And the other one, familiar name, E.J. Smith, Emmett's kid, Stanford transfer, 49 carries, 171 yards, no touchdowns. I think he transferred to Texas A&M expecting to play a bigger role than he has. He's very much the number 3 guy, but either way, you're going to see all 3 of them and more on Friday night.
Yeah, and all 3 of them grade out pretty well. PFF has Daniels and Moss both above 77 in terms of their grade, which are, I believe, the highest grades on for Texas A&M's offense of guys getting regular snaps. So yeah, those runners are definitely very quality players that USC is going to have to figure out how to slow down, given that. The defensive line has reinforcements coming, but they're not there yet. Right. And this is going to be another one of those fronts that could be a little bit concerning. My main concern from a USC perspective against these guys is just, I was watching Notre Dame playing in the playoff and seeing Jeremiah Love just like take off.
He's so good.
And just like having flashbacks to USC, limiting, and then just that one rep that you get washed out as a linebacker, or the defensive line doesn't hold their gaps, and suddenly they're off to the races. For me, it's just going to be about USC again recognizing the limitations of USC's run defense being what they are. For me, it's more about the concentration than anything, because Texas A&M has guys who will be able to rack up yards if you sort of blink.
Yeah, absolutely, especially on the ground. The passing game, not as prolific. Top receiver is Noah Thomas, 34 catches, 545 yards, 6 touchdowns. Jabri Barber from Troy State transfer, 31 catches, 333 yards, and a touchdown. A couple of tight ends to keep an eye on. Trey Watson, 18 catches, 269 yards, and a touchdown. And then the guy I think I'm most intrigued to see, Theo Melin Orstrom, 6'6", out of Stockholm, Sweden. Why is this dude not, a back-checking center for the Dallas Stars? 10 catches, 184 yards, 2 touchdowns. Interesting dude, big dude. So those are the pass catchers that to keep an eye on for the Aggies. Not a lot of production there. I think they're going to run the ball more than anything. And when you look at this offense, all told, you look at the numbers, 28th in FEI offense. That's good, right? Like that.
Yeah.
Like out of 134 teams or whatever it is, that's certainly above average. But it's really buoyed by the strength of schedule that they have by playing SEC defenses. For comparison's sake, SC is 19th in FEI offense, despite having a number 6 ranking in strength of opponents' defenses faced. Texas A&M is 13th in opponents' defenses faced. The numbers themselves, if you look at just the numbers, pretty middling. 47th in scoring at 30.3, 52nd in offensive points per drive, 54th in offensive drive success, 56th in yards per play, 58th in available offensive yards gained. Like we said, good rushing game, 21st in the country in rushing, all told, 199.2 yards per game, but it's at a 4.82 yards per carry clip, which is 43rd in the country. So good, not great. All told, I think this is going to be an offense that sort of fits in line with what SC has seen for the most part this year. And aside from Marcel Reed's legs, I don't know that this is an offense that's going to keep you up at night. Is that fair?
Absolutely. I mean, compared to offenses that USC has faced, that is used to facing in the Pac-12,
right?
There's not a ton here that is like, oh my gosh, USC couldn't possibly limit this offense. Reed is still a young player. He's got a lot of talent. I think as he develops, it's going to be really interesting to see how he comes into his own as a passer. But right now, they don't really want him to be doing a ton as a passer. Mm-hmm. And that may play into their favor if they are able to run the ball. I mean, you look at what they did to LSU, and you see exactly what their game plan for success is. Run the ball, score 5 touchdowns on the ground, 242 yards rushing, and go to town that way. Mm-hmm. If they can't run the ball, as they had issues against Notre Dame and Texas, you see their offense just start to shrink and their productivity start to shrink. Now, the problem is USC's defense is not in the same class as Texas or Notre Dame,
right?
Certainly, but you sort of see the root here is don't let them go crazy in the run game, and that has been an issue for USC this year. USC, like I said before, USC has done a good job defending the run until they don't. Mm-hmm. And when I say good job, I mean not excellent, obviously, but admirable.
Hasn't stopped, but contained.
Yeah,
right?
I think USC can do an admirable job against the run
in slowing teams down.
Yes, the problem is USC has also had too many lapses where suddenly that admirable job against the run just sort of completely breaks down, and the opposing offense just goes to town, a la Notre Dame,
the Michigan game,
a la Michigan. So it's but it is noteworthy that USC against Penn State, the job they did against Penn State defensively on the ground is doable against teams like Texas A&M. Of course, at that point, then we have to throw a dart at the tight end depth chart and decide which one of these random tight ends is going to have the greatest game of their lives. But
Yeah, Ron Murray in the chat says,
stack the box.
Yeah, absolutely. It could be one of those games. I think the interesting thing there is you got to account for the legs of Marcel Reed, right? The other thing is
stack the box and be disciplined.
Yes. SC gets Eric Gentry back. Let's talk about the projected starting offense. There's 12 players we have listed here, but the guys that you expect to see, Cameron Fountain, Gavin Meyer, Nate Clifton, Jamal Muhammad on the defensive line. Probably expect to see Braylon Shelby get in there as well. At linebacker, Mason Cobb, Easton Mascarenas Arnold, and Eric Gentry, who hasn't played in 3 months. Jacoby Covington, Greedy Vance, and probably DeCarlos Nicholson are probably the guys you should expect to see at corner. No Jalen Smith, he's opted out. Sam Green, not going to play at defensive end because he's in the transfer portal. And then Kamari Ramsey is back, and he will be back to play at the Coliseum next year for the Trojans as a senior. And then Akili Arnold is going to play. He hasn't opted out either, along with his brother, Easton. So it's not as bad as it could be in terms of bodies lost on defense. But Jalen Smith is a big spot to fill.
I think Jalen Smith, certainly one could argue, and I would be perfectly willing to make that argument, that Jalen Smith was the best player on the field for USC on any defensive snap all year. So yes, absolutely not having Jalen Smith as a shutdown corner opens you up to create some vulnerability for USC. But this defense, like you pointed out, not all that different. Aside from that, it's they can plug into Carlos Nicholson or John Humphrey. It's not the same level as Jalen Smith, but those guys have played and do know the system and do know where they're supposed to be and all of that. And you would hope that against this particular offense that doesn't necessarily have a wide receiver that is that you need an NFL level corner to defend, that they can sort of repeat what they've been doing all season in terms of playing hard, but the vulnerabilities are going to be what the vulnerabilities were all season.
Right. Let's get to the other side of the ball. SC going up against a Texas A&M defense that is a 4-2-5. Mike Elko has always had great defenses, and so expect that from A&M here. 3 opt-outs, but they are 3 ginormous opt-outs for them. Nick Scorton, the Purdue transfer, all-SEC first-teamer at defensive end, 14 tackles for loss, 5 sacks, along with other defensive linemen, Shamar Stewart and Shamar Turner. Both those guys combined for 11 tackles for loss. Cassius Howell is the guy up front, the only starter who is back and playing for the Aggies in this game. Bowling Green transfer, he had a good season himself, 7.5 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, 6 PBUs. I'm guessing those are all knockdowns, which, got to be mindful of his big mitts going up there. Middle linebacker, Torian York, 75 tackles, 8.5 tackles for loss, 2.5 sacks, and a pick. Will Lee, probably their best player on defense in this game. Kansas State transfer, and he was great at corner so far this year. 42 tackles, 2 picks, 10 PBUs, all SEC second teamer. And then the 2 safeties are guys to watch, including Marcus Ratcliffe, San Diego State transfer, who has really excelled, especially of late. 47 tackles, 3 picks, 3 tackles for loss. And Dalton Brooks, who's second on the team in tackles with 52. 5.5 tackles for loss for him as a safety, which is the same as Kamari Ramsey with 5.5 tackles for loss on SC's defense. You look at the offense going up against these guys. It is a USC offense, Alicia, that is having to replace a couple of offensive linemen. Elijah Page expected to be back at left tackle. Emmanuel Pregnon back in. We thought he was opting out, but he's decided to come back to SC for next season, right? Tobias Raymond is the projected starter at center in lieu of Jonah Monheim, who's opted out. Alani Noah at right guard. He's been the right guard for some time now. Mason Murphy was the right tackle starter for most of the season, but no longer with us. He's over transferring to Auburn. In the transfer portal, he will not be participating. And then at receiver, so much production, percentage lost. You look at all the guys that are Kyron Hudson, Zachariah Branch, Deuce Robinson, all those guys are gone. So Mekhi Lemon, Kyle Ford, Jacoby Lane, probably the three guys that you should expect to see the most, along with like Jay Fair and Jaden Richardson. Look for those guys to get reps on offense at receiver. Running back situation, Alicia, no Woody Marks. He suffered an injury against Notre Dame, only played the beginning of that game. And he was probably always going to not play in the bowl game, given that he's a senior and moving on to the NFL. But it's a tough spot because no Woody Marks and no Quentin Joyner. Quentin Joyner's transferring to Texas Tech. SC's just got Brandon Jackson, true freshman, and Marion Peterson, a sophomore, sophomore, redshirt freshman, either or, like, hasn't exactly had a ton of run himself. I think it's beneficial that the two positions that SC is losing, especially in the run game here, which are the right side of the line, right tackle and center, and then the two running backs going up against the Texas A&M defensive line, that is 75% having to be replaced, right? Like, it's a weird matchup. And of course, Jaden Mayava starting again at quarterback.
Yeah, but if you had given me the option to take any two Texas A&M players off of the board for the bowl game, I would have taken Nick Scorton and Shamar Stewart off of the board.
Absolutely.
So, it's a weird matchup, but one that's very favorable to USC relative to.
Would you take it knowing it would be a swap? Would you take out Scorton and Turner? If you knew that you were going to go into it without Marks and Joyner, in a vacuum, obviously, hypothetical.
No, because I would just want to see Woody Marks play football more.
Sure, but I think that the one thing that and I hate saying this kind of stuff because it sounds like a total disrespect to running backs, but running backs are the most replaceable dudes maybe in all of sports, like running backs and punters, maybe. You know what I mean? Like, and it's not a knock on them. It's just a function of how the run game works. So much of it is what happens in front of them on the offensive line. And luckily for the Trojans, Emmanuel Pregnon is going to be back here, but no Jonah Monheim. Mason Murphy had been a liability on and off the season, but the offensive line had got better as the season went on. So not having two of your starters going up against their line, even a line that has to have a bunch of backups in it, still not going to be completely ideal.
No, but last year USC went into the bowl game with an offensive line that we were trying to sort of figure out how USC was going to scrape it together. Yeah. And it worked out, and we got to see a lot of really good things from the young offensive linemen in that game. So this is a huge opportunity for guys like Tobias Raymond and Jonah T. I'm gonna learn how to say it. There's just too many vowels, and I need to wrap my head around how to say.
Here's the key with Polynesian names. Every single vowel is pronounced.
Tauanu'u. Right? I need to go. Enough. I need to find a clip of him saying it so that I can just sort of mimic it.
That might not be helpful, though.
No, but sometimes it's very not helpful.
Not helpful. Yeah.
But Jonah T. Big opportunity for him and any of the other young guys who we haven't really seen a ton from who get to go in there and play. When it comes down to it, as frustrating as USC's offense has been this season, this is still an offense that is set up to be successful if they execute. And that's what I'm going to be looking forward to seeing. Jaden Mayava with a few more, bunch more practices with first team reps, with an offensive, with a wide receiver core that Mekhi Lemon is now the undisputed number one, get him the ball kind of target, which I think is ultimately going to be a good thing for this offense.
Yeah.
And maybe that's the thing. It's like losing Kyron Hudson and losing Zachariah Branch and losing those guys. It sucks, but the silver lining in this game might be USC having fewer mouths to feed could help them just feed the ones that produce the most. So that's good. The other thing I've been trying to look and see, because I can't confirm, Xavier Jordan, the freshman wide receiver, was injured, which is why we didn't really see him this season. I haven't seen if he's going to be available for this game, but if he is, that's going to be really exciting to see if he gets a chance to run out there and show what he's got, because he was a really exciting prospect that was probably going to contribute as a freshman if not for the injury. So
yeah,
there's some things to look for from a USC perspective, but
yeah,
a lot of this comes down to how that offensive line gels together, and this will be Zach Hansen's first go around at being the guy there. It's a big job he's got.
Yeah, 100%. All right, I got the pronunciation guide on Justin T.
Jonah T.
Justin T. Jonah T. is the guy from Narbonne, formerly.
Oh, it's just shoot.
We made a terrible mistake.
See, I'm so focused on the last name and trying to figure it out.
We're losing credibility left and right here. No, Justin Tawa Nu'u.
Tawa Nu'u.
That's not so bad.
Tawa Nu'u.
Tawa Nu'u.
See, it's easy. This is the thing with a lot of the Polynesian names. It's not that they're hard to say. You just have to find the rhythm of them.
Tawa Nu'u.
Tawa Nu'u. I can do that. Tawa Nu'u. I learned how to say Tuikolavatu perfectly.
Tuikolavatu is so badass.
Badass name. So I can learn how to do Tawa Nu'u. The only Polynesian name that I literally never, ever was able to sort of wrap my head around was Stanley T. I still do not know how to say Stanley T's name, and I've tried, and I've read every pronunciation guide, and I've tried to figure it out. It just doesn't work in my head. So, Tawanu'u, let's go.
Tawanu'u, yeah. All right, Alicia. Before we move on, SC goes into this game. Obviously, we're going to get into talking about score lines and stuff like that, but I think it's key to note that, SC is 6-6, going up against 8-4 Texas A&M, and that makes them the underdog. But it doesn't mean that you can't believe in the Trojans over at Underdog Fantasy. Alicia, this is my favorite fantasy app. I'm playing it all the time. How many times right before a game I'm like, wait a minute, I gotta hop over to Underdog Fantasy and get my picks in. I'm doing it all the time, right? Like, I'm super pumped about it. Over 5 million Americans are already playing Underdog Fantasy across 33 states, including California. All of your favorite leagues, teams, and stars are there to choose from. You just got to project their stats with stat projections. Think your favorites will go over. Will go higher than their stat projections in yards, touchdowns, and catches. Cook up some entries for a shot to win real cash prizes all football season long. I was a big fan of Underdog going higher and lower on the stat projections. First week of the college football playoff. We know that the margin of victories went way higher on all of those.
Yeah.
Way higher. So I'm looking forward to playing over at Underdog Fantasy this week, going into SC and Texas A&M on the Vegas Bowl. Join me over there and download the app. Use the code Reign of Troy to get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly. Every player, every touchdown, just select higher or lower on Underdog. So download the app today and use the code Reign of Troy to get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly. Must be 18 plus, 19 plus in Alabama. and Nebraska 19+ in Colorado for some games, 21+ in Massachusetts and Arizona, present in a state where underdog fantasy operates. Terms apply. Void in Colorado. Concerned with your play, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit ncpgambling.org. In Arizona, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342. And in New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-8778-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY to 467-369. Alicia, before we turn the page and get to our favorite game, which is going to be pivotal going into the Vegas Bowl, thoughts on how Texas A&M sort of fares among the defenses that SC has faced so far this year? Notre Dame, Penn State, Michigan, Nebraska, LSU. Fair bit of defenses that SC has faced. We know that SC is 6th in opponents' defenses faced. I think a lot of that comes from there's just not a lot of stat production in the Big Ten, which I think does sort of alter the perception of Big Ten defenses a little bit. But where does Texas A&M sort of fit for you?
Ahead of LSU, ahead of Nebraska, behind Notre Dame and Michigan and
Penn State surely ahead. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it crazy to say that they would be like maybe 5th? I would put Penn State ahead, Notre Dame ahead, Michigan ahead, and Minnesota ahead. Is that fair? Minnesota's like really good defense, especially in pass defense. So I'd put them all ahead.
Yeah, that's a fair.
Put them all ahead, especially you
I
got
thought about Minnesota
you got to account for the defensive line, sort of not being.
Well,
the
certainly,
same.
yeah, certainly without those defensive linemen, I'll certainly give Minnesota the nod. Yeah, I mean, this is a good defense. This isn't the best defense that USC has faced this year.
Right.
Not the first, second, or third best.
Yeah, but this is also a USC offense that struggled to do anything against UCLA.
It's a USC offense that we cannot make heads nor tails out of. They scored 35 points on a Notre Dame defense that looks impervious when they've played everybody else. They put 30 points up on a Penn State.
Technically, SC scored 49.
Yes, SC did score 40.
There were 2 more touchdown passes that Jaden Mayava threw in that game.
Yes, to the opposition, but you know, this offense put up 30 on a really good Penn State defense as well. So this offense is just, it's hard to gauge this offense against opposing defenses simply because this offense does not always make a lot of sense. Yeah.
It's I think it's fair to say this is Lincoln Riley's worst offense of his career.
Oh, by far,
as
by
a
a
head
mile.
coach, but you know, SC is still a top 20 offense in a lot of statistics. So you got in like the metrics, passing offense. This is easily his least efficient. So SC will need to find a way to be efficient, especially against a corner like Willie III, who is very good, but he's also not Will Johnson at the same time. So we'll see how that goes. Let's go to over under.
So you're going over.
I'm doing bold.
Alicia,
I'll go under. I got to take an under here. I got 3 unders to take.
I'm going to do an under here.
there we go. We almost lost that for a second. But more than anything, I think we've lost me. We've lost me. Where am I? I have gone completely. I forgot to turn on the light here. I'm sorry. Sorry in advance. I don't know where I went. Where'd I go? Can I fix this? There we go. We're fixed. I'm there. There I am. Sorry if you're listening to the podcast version, you're so confused what's going down right now. Anyways, we're back. I'm back over on YouTube. All right, it's a big week of over under. Alicia, this is comes down to all the marbles. It is double points bowl week in over under. Again, this is the rankings. Number 1, Scotty C at 47 points won in over under. Trevor M in second with 46. 28 pinch Jensen SC 11 and Ryan from Arizona are all at 44. Monterey Michelle at 43. Fadian MC from Palmdale, HH and HB and Pickle all at 42, and Moose Pants at 41. That's the top 10. Everybody's in it. It's double points. Who is going to rise to the top? Alicia, what's your first over-under? What do you got?
We got 8.5 Makai Lemon receptions. He had a season-high 9 for 133 yards against Notre Dame. He had 8 in each in the Maryland and Washington games. But Texas A&M has not allowed a receiver to have more than 8 catches this season. Bowling Green's Harold Fannin Jr. had 8 in that game, and that was the high for an individual. So will Makai Lemon have a big receiving day?
I'm going to take the under. I think it's a lot. 8.5 is a hell of a lot to predict. I wouldn't be shocked if he had like 10 catches just because he's clearly going to be the focal point, but I just think it's too high. I got to take the under there. My first over-under for you is 32.5 Texas A&M pass attempts. Marcel Reed had 33 pass attempts in the Texas Bowl a year ago against Oklahoma State. It's the most he's ever had in regulation. He had 35 this year against Auburn, but all but 3 of those were in regulation. So 32.5. 32 is how many he threw in regulation against Auburn. So will he eclipse that this year? This game, 32.5 Texas A&M pass attempts.
I'm taking the under just because I think that we continue to see games sort of be sped up a little bit. So I think that considering the running that we expect Texas A&M to do, considering the speed of games and the reduction of plays overall, I'm just going to play the odds and take the under.
All right, that's fair. What do you got next one?
1.5 USC sacks. USC has had, shockingly, 2 or more sacks in each of the last 3 games.
Mm-hmm.
Texas A&M this season averages 1.83 sacks allowed per game, but in November, when they were 1-3, they were allowing 2.75 sacks per game. So they were vulnerable against the better fronts that they faced. Mm-hmm. USC is not one of the better fronts that they faced, but you know, there's some talent on the edges that you hope can break through. So 1.5 USC sacks.
You blitz all night.
Under. I'm just you do sacks for your over under all the time, and I have to stick to under.
It's a safe bet.
Yeah.
But Eric Gentry's back, so
he is.
Maybe.
And perfect. Thank you for the segue. My next over under is 1.75 Eric Gentry tackles for loss. Alicia, can I just tell you my favorite USC stat of the season? The Trojans have played 12 games. Eric Gentry has played 4 of them. He still leads the Trojans in tackles for loss. He's only played 4 games.
It's astounding.
6.5. 6.5 in 4 games for Eric Gentry. 2 against LSU, 3 at Michigan. He has a full tackle for loss more than Kamari Ramsey, who is number 2. It's a DB. A DB sounds weird. A safety that's number 2 for the Trojans. It's not great for the front 7.
It's not a slight on Eric Gentry, because having 6.5 tackles for loss in just 4 games is crazy. Like that's a huge total for him in those games. But it is astounding that he's still the tackle for loss leader when you take into account that Jamil Muhammad, who was at USC last year with 10.5 tackles for loss, Mason Cobb had 7 tackles for loss. Jalen Smith had 5.5 tackles for loss last year alone. Like players on this roster last year who had well more than 6 tackles for loss couldn't surpass that in a full 12-game season. I don't understand it. Like Mason Cobb only had 2.5 tackles for loss this season.
Show me something. Show the fans something.
Jamil Muhammad 1.5 tackles for loss this season. It's just wild.
Yeah, not good. So 1.75 Eric Gentry tackles for loss. Taking the over or the under?
I'm taking the under. Again, playing the odds. I don't know how much he's going to play. We don't know what his snap counts are going to be, and because of that, I just gotta go with the under.
I think that's fair. That's valid. What's your last one?
My last one is 2.5 combined turnovers for USC and Texas A&M. So both of these teams had a turnover problem in November. USC's November turnover margin was -3. Texas A&M's November turnover margin was -3. They both couldn't protect the ball, and they both couldn't really generate turnovers either. So 2.5 turnovers combined for both teams.
I'm going to take the over. It's a bowl game. I think teams tend to be more aggressive in bowl games. Look at Texas A&M last year, threw the ball a bunch in a bowl game. So I'm going to take the over. I think that both teams are going to be aggressive. We know that Jaden Mayava loves to be a gunslinger too. I think he could participate in that too. Over on the 2.5. My last one, 4.5. USC punts. So this is an Eddie Chaplitsky shout outs. First time
Ray Guy Award winner
will ever have a Ray Guy winner in the backfield on special teams punting the ball. 4.5 punts. Texas A&M is allowing an average of exactly 4.5 punts. I thought that was a perfect line for this.
I'm taking the under here just because, like I pointed out in my last over-under, USC has not necessarily protected the ball super well over the past few games. We know that Jaden Mayava is good for an interception or two. There's always the chance of fumbles. There's always a chance of this USC team likes to get in field goal range and then, turn over the ball in downs or anything like that. Right. So, I just think I think it's lower. I mean, like under, but mostly because I think USC will lose possession in other ways more likely.
Yeah. Fair enough. I think that is probably a fair pick. All right, Vegas spread has Texas A&M -1. Alicia, what is your prediction for the Vegas Bowl, SC and Texas A&M? What do you got?
I like that 1 point differential, but I'm going 21-20 USC because I am an eternal optimist, and I've never seen a game that I couldn't predict USC to win. And I am hoping, considering the way that the team rallied last season in the bowl game, considering the talent that USC has, regardless of how that talent has been reliable or unreliable this season, I hate picking against USC. So I'm going to go with USC in this.
I actually think this is a case of optimistic, Alicia.
Hey, one of their best performances of the season was in Vegas at the start of the season.
For sure. I don't think it's optimistic of you to pick an SC win here.
By 1 point.
I don't think that's worthy of hitting the drop. It's more so that you're like, I couldn't see an SC game in which I wouldn't pick them to win. Yeah. I, too, am going to pick a 1 point game, but I am going to the Aggies. 31-30. Texas A&M. I think about last year. You didn't have any expectations to go into the Holiday Bowl, and it was like weirdly an exciting game to watch.
Mm-hmm.
In part because SC just chucked the ball around a bunch with Miller Moss. I think that this game could be similar in the sense, not that SC is going to control the game like they did last year against Louisville, but more so. I think that you got nothing to lose on both sides here. I think both teams are going to try to move the ball, even if all the evidence says otherwise. I think that this could end up being a higher scoring game than you might think in that sense. So 31-30 is my prediction there. We, of course, will be back here at Mandatory Radio Friday night after the game. It should be late. Probably like 11 o'clock or so, for a CarCast to wrap this thing up and wrap up our thoughts about the Vegas Bowl, SC and Texas A&M. So join us then. We'll do a Fallout episode next week-ish, maybe, but we might end up pushing it back to the beginning of January. next week's a tough week for us.
Monday
schedule-wise.
Monday the 30th is not a great day.
We might end up pushing back to the first Monday in January. I'm not going to say the date for funny reasons, but
again, and I know that this isn't the most reliable thing to say.
Yeah,
our podcasting schedule might depend on circumstances around whether or not we'll do a Fallout episode if we have a lot to talk about in terms of Fallout beyond what we talk about on the CarCast. We'll do a Fallout episode at some point during the week if like big transfers or big news happens. We'll try to fit it in. I don't know that we can commit 100% to an episode right now on a given date in the next 10 days.
Other than that, though, expect us back Monday, first Monday of January. So before we go, Ron Murdy says, which team will have more fans in Vegas?
I think USC. I think USC fans travel well for bowl games, and I think that Vegas is a place that USC fans would love to go.
As much as I want to sit here and say, well, I think my dad's going to the game, but who is who has the gusto to go to the game? I just remember 2019. Everybody and their mom talked about how they wouldn't be going to the Holiday Bowl because Clay Helton and SC thoroughly outnumbered Iowa, and there was a metric crap ton of SC fans there. There were a lot of SC fans at the Holiday Bowl last year when people didn't feel good about things. SC travels to Vegas. I think people will make it a reason just to go to Vegas. I expect it probably to be 50-50. Texas A&M fans probably are going to go to Vegas because they've never played in Vegas before.
That's a good point. They've never played in Vegas.
It's a reason to go to Vegas.
Yeah.
The game can be secondary in this sort of aspect. So, all right. We'll be back Friday after the game with the CarCast. Until then, you know where to find us. We'll see you. Oh, and Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, and Happy Festivus. Celebrate whatever you celebrate, and we hope it's joyous, festive, merry, and up the Chels. See ya.
Up the Reds.
Cincinnati Reds?
See ya.